Melissa Gilbert pleaded with Michael Landon to alter the scripts of Little House on the Prairie, but America insisted on romance. Despite never having been kissed before, she was coerced into giving birth at the tender age of 15. Dean Butler, at the age of 23, recognized the impropriety of the situation, but they continued filming scene after scene anyway. 100 crew members watched as her mother sobbed in the shadows, and viewers vented their anger through angry letters. Now, both stars are finally acknowledging what everyone suspected, but no. The reality of Melissa Gilbert's on-screen romance is more sinister than anyone could have anticipated. Born Melissa Gilbert on May 8, 1964, in Los Angeles, her biological parents, Kathy Wood and David Darlington, were engaged and had 3 children each from previous marriages when she was born. The day after her birth, they placed her for adoption, citing financial concerns about raising a 7th child. Melissa never spent a night with her biological parents. Instead, she was taken in by Paul Gilbert, an actor and comedian, and his wife, Barbara. The sudden split affected Barbara Crane, a dancer and actress, so deeply that she wrote in Prairie Tale, "A large part of my life has been an illusion." For Melissa Gilbert, who was 11 years old when she received the news that her father had died of a stroke, a rational explanation given his history of strokes, the reality was much more devastating. Melissa, at the age of 44, was devastated to learn that Gilbert had committed suicide decades earlier. Gilbert had been a fighter pilot during World War II and had endured constant, excruciating pain as a result of his injuries. The Veterans Administration had been caring for him, but they were unable to help him cope. After speaking with Oprah, Melissa hired a private investigator to uncover the truth and understand why the one person who had saved her from being unwanted had mysteriously disappeared. No one had ever explained why. Truth was told to Melissa, despite her adoption. Her adoptive mother, Barbara Crane, was the daughter of Harry Crane, a giant in early television who wrote for the Oscars, the Emmys, and even the Golden Globes. Harry created The Honeymooners and helped reinvent the Dean Martin show with the idea of celebrity roasts. Melissa would grow up in a world shaped by Harry's legacy. Melissa was raised in a family where TV scripts were set. Red carpets weren't out of reach. They were an everyday part of her life. The showbiz energy permeated the whole family. In 1967, Paul and Barbara adopted a child named Jonathan Gilbert. In 1975, Barbara had a daughter named Sarah with her new husband, attorney Harold Abele. All 3 of Melissa's children, Jonathan, Sarah, and Melissa, became famous on television. Melissa didn't just stumble into fame. She earned it. She began appearing in commercials before she was 5 years old, with one of her most famous roles coming in 1977 with an Alpo dog. Melissa Gilbert entered a casting room full of over 500 hopeful girls in early 1973, and as she began her screen test with Michael Landon, something happened. NBC was searching nationwide for the ideal child to play Laura Les in a new pilot. The ad featured Lauren Green and Gilbert's natural chemistry, and Melissa gushed about her dog Fluffy winning a blue ribbon at the age of 9. Gilbert would go on to have a life-defining role in the role. He beheld a youthful actress, and what he later described as, "There was a magic in her performance. It wasn't acting, it was Laura." That fateful day at the Burbank studios changed Melissa's life. Melissa, who had never watched Bonanza, the show that had catapulted Landon to stardom for 14 years running, had no idea who Landon was. So, during her audition, she didn't pretend to be nervous or impress him with compliments. Instead, she simply acted out the part. Landon had been hoping for her lack of polish, in fact, precisely what Melissa had brought to her performance. Melissa's discovery of her casting felt like a scene from a television drama. Leslie Michael Landon, a classmate, approached her with a broad grin and said, "My dad picked you." There was no phone call involved. Instead, their natural connection became the driving force behind Little House on the Prairie for the subsequent 9 years. Melissa filmed the pilot in the picturesque California hills in the summer of 1973. It aired the following March and attracted over 17 million viewers, a huge success. However, even after that, she had to wait nearly a year to find out if the show would become a full series. The two girls were simply in a school hallway when the show began. Years later, those same two girls would return to set, with Leslie playing school teacher Ada Plum in the show's final seasons. Little House on the Prairie premiered in June 1974 and ran for 9 seasons, capturing the trials and tribulations of a frontier family. One audition scene sealed her fate. She had to play out a scene where Laura says goodbye to her dog. It was a difficult scene, filled with genuine pain and tears. Landon watched closely, and by the end, he too was moved to tears. Not many adult actors could pull it off. At the height of her career, when the show was drawing over 20 million viewers per episode, Melissa was growing up in front of an entire country. From the time she was 10 years old until she was 19, millions of Americans watched as she lost baby teeth, grew taller, and went through puberty, all while being recorded. She wasn't just playing a character, she was herself. Melissa, along with the other child actors, formed a close-knit group that lived in 2 worlds at once. While most kids her age were out riding bikes or doing homework, she was learning lines and getting the camera ready at dawn. Instead of attending a traditional classroom, tutors would jump in between takes to provide quick, focused lessons to meet state education laws. It wasn't easy, but it worked. Melissa, despite her busy schedule as a student and star, managed to land roles that demonstrated she wasn't just a one-show wonder. In 1979, she played the role of Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker, which was intense and emotional and earned her an Emmy nomination. A year later, she played Anne Frank in another dramatic role, which earned her another nomination. These weren't just roles for cute kids. Melissa nailed them all while still a teenager. Melissa's transformation into Laura Less, her character's values, struggles, and strength, became an integral part of her identity during filming Little House. The show had become more than just a job. It had become an extension of her childhood, her family, and her entire world. By the time the show ended, there was no longer a distinct boundary between her real self and the character she had played. Season 6 of Little House on the Prairie aired during Family Hour and prided itself on wholesome storytelling. As a result of this pairing, eyebrows were raised not only among viewers but also within the cast. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Ingalls, was just 15 years old, while actor William Butler, who played Almanza Wilder, was 23 years old. While this age gap may not seem significant now, it felt like a canyon back in 1979. College, and yet they were expected to portray romantic scenes, emotional intimacy, and first kisses on screen for millions of viewers. This decision by the producers caused tension and discomfort that never truly went away. Melissa openly expressed her emotions when she heard Dean was cast. She called it a perfect storm of disappointment, fear, anger, and nausea. She had hoped to act opposite someone her own age. In the episode titled Sweet 16, they brought in a man with stubble, whom Melissa was expected to kiss. However, this was more than just acting. It became real. Melissa and Laura both experienced their first kiss, not just on camera, but in real life as well. There were no dates, no experience, and nearly 100 people staring as the cameras rolled. Dean Butler, who knew it was awkward later. Melissa's mother, Barbara A. Blease, watched from behind the cameras as her daughter leaned in for the kiss. Barbara broke down in tears. This wasn't a proud moment. It was a painful one. Her little girl was growing up not in private but in front of the cameras, and he was nervous about it. He knew that in today's Hollywood, this kind of casting would never fly, and it would be rejected instantly. But back then, it happened, and it became one of the most talked about moments in the show's history. Dean vividly recalled the incident from his memoir Prairie, where he discussed how Barbara had initially disliked his casting and later became devastated by the kiss because she couldn't bear to see him kiss her daughter. Melissa, on the other hand, did everything in her power to prevent the kiss, even pleading with show creator Michael Landon to alter the scene so that Dean could hug her instead. She begged desperately to remain in her comfort zone, but the scripts insisted on having passionate kisses scene after scene. No matter how sick she felt, she had to play the part. Some viewers loved the romance, while others were horrified. One mother even wrote to the newspaper demanding that the casting director be burned at the stake for pairing a teenage girl with a grown man. Dean Butler received letters from fans who felt uneasy watching certain scenes. They weren't mistaken. A 1979 article predicted that this role would be the most challenging of the season, not due to the lines themselves, but to the reality that Dean Butler had to convince viewers that it's okay for an adult to fall in love with a teenage girl. In spite of the criticism, the show was a huge success. Sweet 16 aired twice during prime time that summer and became a cultural phenomenon. Years later, TV Land even honored the actors for their iconic kiss, but at what cost? To a girl of just 15 years old, her mother, an actor who struggled with self-consciousness, and an industry that, Dean later stated, "You just couldn't do it today." He is correct. Times have changed, standards have evolved, and thankfully, Hollywood's treatment of young actors has also changed. Unfortunately, for Melissa Gilbert, this breakthrough came far too late. Her childhood was molded by a script that she did not write. Melissa Gilbert's life appeared picture perfect on television, but behind the scenes, everything was crumbling. Millions of people watched as she grew up as the heroine. Melissa, played by Laura Less on Little House on the Prairie, was slowly but surely succumbing to an addiction that began in her adolescence and escalated rapidly into a life-threatening condition by the time she was an adult. On a night when she had dinner guests over, she blacked out and passed out in her dog's bed. It was at that moment that she realized she couldn't continue living this way. But alcohol wasn't her only escape. Additionally, she battled loneliness brought on by fame and the relentless pressures of being a child star. Cocaine helped dull the pain for a while, but the damage eventually showed up in all areas of her life, including her relationships and parenting. Ultimately, her own son begged her to quit drinking, and that was the most devastating moment of her life. It was a wake-up call she couldn't ignore, so she joined Alcoholics Anonymous the following day. The 12-step program became her lifeline. Sitting in those meetings listening to others share their darkest stories, she finally felt less alone. In her 2009 memoir Prairie Tale, she opened up about her addictions, failed relationships, and the emotional wreckage left behind by a childhood spent in the spotlight. But that wasn't the end of the trauma. In the early 1990s, Melissa auditioned for a role in Oliver Stone's film The Doors. What happened next haunted her for years. According to Gilbert Stone wanted revenge because she had once publicly mentioned him negatively, and now, during the audition, he played a cruel joke on her by giving her a scripted scene that he said he had written specifically for her. The scene was a trap, with explicit lines that made her kneel down and repeat the words, "Do me, baby." Her humiliation was palpable, and she was overcome with emotion as she looked at Stone's icy expression and heard, "Good, that will make it better." Gilbert never backed down after her casting director disappeared, leaving her to deal with Stone and another actor. She ran out in tears, believing the whole thing was a punishment. Then came her marriage to Bo Brinkman, which seemed like a Hollywood romance at first. However, their 6-year marriage was rocky due to his emotional abuse, alcoholism, and constant infidelity. In one of the most heinous acts of betrayal, motion collapse, Brinkman allegedly had an affair with Shannon Doherty, Melissa's former Little House co-star. Doherty had once regarded Melissa as a big sister, but now she had become a part of her heartbreak when Shannon was just 19 years old. When asked what she would say if she saw Doherty again, Melissa said, "I would just punch her in the nose." This betrayal occurred around 40 years ago. The next shocking event occurred just 2 months after Melissa gave birth to their son Dakota via C-section. She was roused from her slumber by his cries, and made her way downstairs to warm a bottle. To her horror, she discovered her husband engaged in sexual relations with another woman, their bedroom illuminated by a dim TV light. For a brief moment, she believed it was all a dream, but it wasn't. Standing there in shock, he asked, "What are you looking at?" without expressing any regret or remorse. The woman was a sex worker whom Brinkman had met on the late-night sex program The Robin Birch Show. When Melissa confronted him, he blamed her, saying that she was to blame for not being sexually available after surgery. This wasn't the end of it, though. After the woman left, Brinkman came upstairs in a rage. Despite her lack of emotion, she walked calmly to the fridge, got the milk, warmed it, and returned to feed their infant. All the while, her husband continued to cheat on her right there on their couch. "What's wrong with you?" he asked angrily when she attempted to keep things calm for their newborn. He then instigated an argument when she expressed her disbelief that he had brought a hooker into their home. His behavior escalated from there. He accused her of being selfish, blamed her for his career setback, and emotionally punished her for informing her mother about her pregnancy before contacting him, all because he was unreachable. After losing 2 marriages and spending decades in the spotlight, Melissa Gilbert found something unexpected: true love, at the age of 48. Their names were Timothy Busfield, and they had known each other for over 20 years, but they had never been romantically involved. He gave her the silent treatment for 3 days, and completely missed their baby shower due to his drinking binge. Gilbert had 2 sons, and Busfield had 3 of his own. They weren't starting over. They were blending lives. However, this time Gilbert felt different because Busfield gave her something she hadn't had before: a true love, in a quiet romantic ceremony at the Santa Isidro Ranch in Santa Barbara on April 24, 2013. She wore red, not white, a striking strapless gown by Morgan Lafey. Collaborating with someone who believed in her and encouraged her was a huge boost for Gilbert in 2018. They eventually relocated to upstate New York, far from the chaos of Hollywood, where they now live and work side by side. Gilbert had a turbulent past, though. In 2000, she was elected to the Screen Actors Guild Board of Directors. The following year, she shocked everyone by becoming the 3rd woman ever elected president of SAG. The election was fierce, and her opponent was. Valerie Harper received 10,692 votes, giving her a 45% victory over Gilbert, 12,280 votes. 3% up to 39%. 4% of Hollywood's elite were taken aback by the fact that the union had been fractured during the presidency of William Daniels. Daniels had spearheaded the 6-month-long longest strike in Hollywood history, which was directed against advertisers. In 2000, Gilbert made a commitment to rectify the situation, and in March 2002, she achieved victory once more. This time, she received 21,351 votes out of 37,742, with a record-high proportion of eligible voters casting ballots, 41. The former Laura Less actress was unexpectedly named vice president of the AFL-CIO in December 2001. During her leadership, which lasted from 2001 to 2005, she met with senators, governors, and mayors, and she vigorously advocated for performers' rights. Just when everyone thought they had her figured out, Gilbert shocked them once again on August 10, 2015, at the age of 51, by announcing her candidacy for Congress in Michigan's 8th District, a Republican stronghold. She had only relocated to the area 2 years prior. The backlash was immediate, as her opponent's team accused her of being a tax cheat and revealed that she owed $360,000 in federal taxes and $112,000 to the state of California, nearly. She confessed to having $500,000 in unpaid taxes and put it down to a combination of career setbacks, the effects of the recession, and her divorce. She was on a payment plan, and the campaign continued until May 24, 2016, when she abruptly withdrew, not due to politics, but due to pain. In 2012, while competing on Dancing with the Stars, she had a concussion and whiplash from a fall. Later, her Studio City home's balcony collapsed. The injuries never fully healed, and doctors' info. After leaving Congress in 2002, Gilbert continued to fight for change. She attended a White House event to promote literacy across the country, met with White House staff to discuss runaway production and copyright issues, which were major problems for American film workers, and chaired important committees. Her arm was in pain, and her neck throbbed. There was no other Democrat on the ballot, so her exit handed the victory to her Republican opponent. During her 2016 campaign, she publicly supported Planned Parenthood. She tweeted with Idris Stand with PP and attended Walk for Choice events. Her pro-choice stance was more than just a political statement, it was a personal one. In 2014, even before she ran for office, she campaigned for the position of young performers' rights and for diversity. During her time working for Michigan gubernatorial candidate Mark Schauer, Melissa Gilbert's unwavering support for Democratic causes was evident. However, her most memorable public achievement occurred at a much earlier age, when she became the youngest person ever to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. The star, located at 6429 Hollywood Boulevard, serves as a permanent reminder that Gilbert wasn't just a child star. She had produced the Emmy-winning The Miracle Worker in 1979 and had done more than 30 commercials for Crest McDonald's by the time she was just 2 years old. In 1987, just 2 years after receiving her star, Melissa Gilbert made her off-Broadway debut in Asha Metal. She went on to win the Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Debuting Actress. In January 2015, at the age of 50, Gilbert made the courageous decision to have her breast implants removed. It wasn't just a health choice. It was a personal rebellion against the Hollywood ideal of beauty that she had internalized for years. The implants came after her divorce, when she began dating again. Everything appeared to be going swimmingly after surgery, but as time went on, she began to feel uneasy about how her breast implants looked and felt. She even joked about how Zumba might give her 2 black eyes, but the true reason went deeper. She was worried about the future, specifically what would happen if she needed a hip replacement at 80 years old and also had to replace her breast implants. She realized that implants had a shelf life, so she decided to remove them, reclaiming control of her body. However, getting to this point wasn't without its challenges. In 2012, at 48 years old, she joined Dancing with the Stars, and the pressure to appear young reached its peak. She confessed that it was during this time that she turned to cosmetic enhancements like Botox, spray tans, hair extensions, and breast implants. Looking back, she felt like a cartoon, comparing herself to Carrot Top. The Botox made her eyebrows sharp and pointy, and she was unable to show emotion on the show. Despite this, she continued to pursue youth, fearing that she would age out of her roles. She wanted to remain the youthful ingenue, even though she knew it was impossible. Long before all this, Gilbert had opened up about addiction, trauma, and years of hiding behind fame in her 2009 memoir Prairie Tale. It was raw and honest. She wrote about how alcohol had started out as a social crutch, but had turned into a coping mechanism. Her husband Timothy Busfield's quiet support, combined with the photos she saw at the event, pushed her to change. Busfield loved her just the way she was, without expectations or pressure. Her children's pleas that she quit drinking served as a wake-up call. She eventually turned to 12-step programs, therapy, and gradually rebuilt herself. Her book became more than a confession. It became a symbol of survival. She laid it all bare, and in the end, she was able to overcome her addiction and her childhood stardom, constant attention, and profound loneliness. By doing so, she brought comfort to others who were going through tough times. In the same year, she powerfully returned to her roots as Maze in the musical Little House on the Prairie. The show premiered in Minneapolis in August 2008 and broke records at the box office. Every seat was filled during the 34-week tour that followed, and Gilbert was involved in more than just the acting. She was also the tour's national spokesperson. The tour did more than just entertain, it gave. Gilbert's return to Little House wasn't about nostalgia, but about rediscovering the simple values of the show: family, honesty, and strength. These qualities mirrored her journey on Dancing with the Stars, where she had an unforgettable run despite finishing fifth. Her partner, Maxim Jurovsky, was fiery and intense, and they worked with Habitat for Humanity to build homes in each city they visited. They also worked with the Seeing Eye, a group that trains guide dogs. Did not always get along, but their chemistry was real, and no one could predict how far they would go, making each week feel like a cliffhanger. She danced through injury. A concussion in April 2012 nearly ended her career, but she rested for just one day and continued. Her highlight was a samba with the Chmielewski brothers. One judge joked that it was like a Chmielewski sandwich, with Gilbert in the middle as the cream filling. On her last night, which was also her 48th birthday, she posted her highest score, but she was still eliminated. However, she found a way to overcome her challenges and emerge victorious. Disappointment turned to pride as she declared, "I'm amazed I made it this far." The year 2024 marked half a century since the premiere of Little House on the Prairie. A massive reunion event, attended by more than 18,000 fans, brought Melissa Gilbert and Dean Butler together, who had grown up in the public eye, not as Laura and Almanzo but as friends. They reminisced and shared stories. Shared their experiences working on the show and how it affected them.